In this section, I'll be designing a complex material that uses multiple mapped components and multiple map channels. To get started, open the Lounge B sample file. It contains a piece of furniture that will give you a sense of scale while you're designing the material, and this is very important. Select the floor plane and assign a standard material to it. Map the diffuse color with the tiles map, and show the map in the viewport. I'll be designing a hardwood floor material, so I'd like to get the grid to appear like the planks of wood in that hardwood floor. Change the size to 16 feet by 1 foot, and this will create long, thin tiles that simulate planks of wood. By default, the tiles map uses the stack bond preset type, which creates a grid. Choose half running bond. This is a brick pattern, and this is going to work better for us in the hardwood floor because it staggers the tile cells. The next thing I'd like to work on is the grout setup, or the gap between the individual tile cells. Open Advanced Controls and decrease the gap. Notice that as you do that, it's decreasing the gap on both horizontal and vertical gaps. To see this more accurately, it's necessary to use a test render or active shade. You can see a faint gap here, and this gap is much larger. Unlock horizontal and vertical, and decrease horizontal gap to 0.01. This will give us a faint gap between the planks of wood. I'll close Active Shade and zoom out a bit more. The tiles map gives you the ability to use color or fade variants to create difference between the individual tile cells. Set fade variance at 0.3 and you'll see some obvious difference in intensity here. But unfortunately, the pattern repeats, and it's easy to see how that is repeating because the number of tiles that it's repeating over is a 4x4 grid, and that's controlled right here. Now at this point, I'm going to apply the map scaler modifier, and it doesn't really change much. It's set at 1 inch by default. And I'm doing this because I'm anticipating changing the count grid here. I'll go into Active Shade so you can see this more clearly. So the pattern is obviously repeating here, and this would not work very well for a hardwood floor. I'm going to increase the count grid to 40 by 40, so I'm boosting it 10 times. By doing that, what's happening is the pattern that repeats is much larger, so we might not be able to perceive it. But as we boost that pattern up, the individual cells become much smaller. So to compensate for this, I'll increase the scale of the map scaler by a factor of 10. So I'll make this 10 inches. I'll reinitialize Active Shade, and you'll see the grid. Now, the pattern is repeating, but it's repeating over such a large grid, a 40 by 40 grid of tile cells, that it's hard to pick that out, and it looks a lot more natural. If you do happen to see the repetition, change the random seed value just by incrementing the number, and you'll get a different variation of intensity. You can try that as many times as you need to get a natural looking pattern.